Hello peoples, welcome to the Stoked Bloke Show. This is a special Pipeline Pro wrap-up episode. We've got to see some amazing surfing and some interesting decisions along the way that'll be great to discuss, and some big news. Felipe Toledo taking the year off, so a lot of things to talk about in today's podcast. Big thanks to A New Earth Project and the Pipeline Studios and my good mate here, Peter PK King.
Too easy.
For being a part of it all and making the Stoked Bloke Show happen. So today we're going to look at that Pipeline Pro, PK. You've been here the whole event. I missed a couple of those smaller days. Almost felt like in protest I couldn't come because they ran in some conditions that were maybe the worst ever. And for the ladies, we saw Carissa Moore in her very last heat ever on the tour go out in 1 to 3 foot beach break conditions. Well, it was a sad situation. Moana Jones-Wong also went out on that small day. Both those ladies are the very best surfers out here on a day-to-day basis. If it's right-handers, Carissa, if it's left-handers, Moana, both of them knocked out in beach break type conditions before the good day. That was pretty sad.
Yeah, how do we deal with that emotionally?
Oh, I mean, it was tough for me.
Do we shake our fist and yell at the WSL, or do we just accept that this is the fate of the World Surf League approach to competition surfing?
Well, I suppose we have to go back a little bit, don't we? And there was the big day that became quite controversial. I didn't see that day. I was up at sunset and I was 100% positive they were running. Looking at sunset, looking at the size, looking at the conditions, I went, oh, it's on for sure. And then when I heard it was, they were postponed the start, I was like, oh, hold on. And to not run that day, how did it look to you down here?
To me, it looked like a terrible decision, obviously. I heard some people say also there's not 4 waves in 30 minutes, but nobody gets 2 waves in a heated pipe. Very rare.
Very rare.
I mean, John, Barron, a couple of those guys on a good day, they get 2 waves. But usually people are getting a great wave and a backup. That day would have been the same, but that great wave would have been a wave of consequence. It would have been radical. It would have been awesome. Then it would have opened up the next day to run some women's heats and some real pipeline of consequence.
And that was a day when there was the opportunity for history to be made. The fact that the Carissa texted WSL and asked them to consider running, because they've if they were a baby, they would have kept them in nappies for a long time. and on the final day, we'd lost Moana and Carissa, the 2 best in our minds to date, the 2 best we've ever seen out there for the women. We lost them in tiny, tiny conditions. So that just, for me, put a shadow or a cloud over everything. I was so sad for those 2 ladies because we know how much. For Moana, this is her chance. This event, the Pipeline events, is where she shines.
Well, they give her a wild card because of who she is and what she's done. They invited her because she is the queen of Pipeline. And they put her out in conditions that were worse than the Super Gold Pro at Oceanside on the worst day.
It was
a crime scene.
Yeah.
For her and Carissa to bow out on that small day, that was a crime scene decision. Someone should be in jail at WSL, or at least fired. Is that a possibility?
Well, no. No, it's not, but I agree. That was a really sad situation and was a dark cloud over. Even on the finals day, it was sad for me, and I still feel for both those ladies. Carissa having her last heat. Moana doesn't get that many opportunities to compete out there against the best in the world, so for both of them was a massive opportunity lost. I think it's fair to say that WSL does not like surfers from outside of their ranks winning events.
Oh, for sure. And did you see the wave Moana caught after the event?
Oh, we love that wave she got after the event.
Oh, my God.
I saw her that night at Surf Night, and she had a smile on her face because at least she got to show what she was capable of. So that was a sad situation, but there was history made. Yeah.
Molly and Katie were amazing, huh?
Yeah, Molly, Betty Lou, and Katie, those 3 girls, the future of women's surfing was on display. It was a historic display. There was very little difference between those top 3 ladies and the men. They were doing everything to blow our minds, and across the beach and across the surfing world, I think everybody stood up and went, oh my gosh, I never knew, I never understood. We all take our hat off to you. That was It was a historic situation, and we got to witness it right here from the house.
It was a huge push forward. Katie was amazing.
Amazing.
Pretty brash, too. That was a funny comment she made. It's for the frickin' ladies.
Yeah, the F-bomb got dropped. A little bit of old school punk rocks in the surfing culture. I really love that, eh? When I saw that quote, I didn't see it. We were here watching live, so we didn't see the webcast. It was an amazing sort of a throwback to another point in time when the sport was a little rough around the edges and not quite so professional.
Well, she's pretty cool, right? I mean, she's bringing a little punk rock element.
Yeah, we love that.
And I mean, that approach and charging, winning pipe, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, super cool. So to the ladies, thank you for a historic show, particularly those top three. I think it's fair to, in Betty Lou, Molly Picklum and Caitlyn Simmers, I think it's fair to say that the previous generation, what we just saw and witnessed was a generational shift of monumental proportions, because if you were to look at, call it Tyler Wright, Stephanie Gilmore, and all of the top ladies from the past generation, Lakey Peterson, you can look at any of those names from the past generation. They cannot do what the new generation did on that final day. So we saw a historic shift in women's surfing, and we saw the future on display, and the performances went through the roof, and they proved that pipeline is for the fucking girls. You know what I mean? That was just a beauty. So congratulations, girls. That was an amazing show. Everyone along the beach and around the world was, I think they were blown away at what they saw. So big props to WSL in that sense for actually letting them surf in some real ways, because most of the time they're mothering them and trying to protect them. They don't need protecting, mate. They need being pushed out there in those elements. And when they are, they rose, and it was a great day for surfing and for women's surfing. What do you think about the men's?
Well, the men's, the conditions kind of deteriorated for the final, but it was cool to see John and Barron. I mean, you'd always had hoped all week. It looked like those two were marching towards each other. Imagine being a WSL level surfer and having a wave like Pipeline where it takes 10,000 hours to master.
Yes.
And it's one of your home breaks, and now you're in the contest. So a huge advantage for Barron and John. Those guys see things forming up that other people don't even notice.
Yes.
They're not catching waves that are coming obviously from a mile out to sea. They're catching little pop-up waves that are jumping over from Aukai and getting long runner rights, or, a last minute left that's just barely makeable. And they kept doing these performances that, like you said, were incredible. John against Leo pulls it out with 50 seconds left.
And Leo was impressive too.
Leo was winning.
Yeah, he had and he surfed a great event.
Yeah.
That was his best Pipeline Masters performance, or Pipeline Pro performance, and he did great. Seth Meniz also sort of showed that he has the ability to win this event, but then you've got to be able to compete. And I think one of the other influencing factors was that all of the goofy footers in the field, bar Connor O'Leary, were knocked out on the small backdoor day. So by the time we got to finals day, there was only one goofy footer left in the lineup, Connor O'Leary. And Connor O'Leary got there through two heats doing backhand re-entries.
Yeah, the men suffered that small day curse too.
Yeah, they
Just
did.
A bummer.
It was a small backdoor day. There were beautiful waves. It was a great day to free surf, perhaps. But as far as competition goes, not going the big day put the pressure on them. They had to run in conditions that were less than ideal. But then Mother Nature and Pipeline in the North Shore, as it always does, if you've got 12 days here in winter, it doesn't matter whether it's December or February, you are going to get enough days to run a competition. And even with the mistakes made by WSL in not running the big day and choosing some weird conditions to run some people in, there were some sacrificial lambs, the goofy footers on the small backdoor day, and then Carissa and Moana for the women on that terrible small beach break style day. That really hurt in my mind, because going into finals day, that made the Barron Mamia John final even more obvious, because they were by far the best.
How many spots on the World Tour, besides it being a massive wave of consequence, are people surfing their home break? This is John and Barron's home break. I mean, Barron is called Backdoor Barron for a reason. And we know John is Mr. Pipeline.
Yeah.
So how many events, even on this World Tour, are at anyone on tour's home break.
Yeah, very, very, very rarely.
No one's a local at Bell's right now, right? That's on tour.
No. And then you go to Chopu.
There's no snapper.
The wild cards get a chance, don't they? They come in and they get a chance, but they don't have the competitive experience.
They don't really have the chance with the WSL judges. Like you said, they don't want the wild cards to knock out seeds.
No, it makes the sport look bad, and it makes your guys or people look like they're not the best in the world because there's people who are better than them at this particular venue. So that's an interesting thing. And what we've got to see...
Maybe West Oz, Jack Robbo.
Jacob
Wilcox.
Yep.
I can't think of too many spots where locals are on the tour.
Yeah. Well, Sunset's coming up.
I know.
And there's going to be those
there's
same
a lot
people.
of locals at Sunset. Seth, Barron, John.
Yeah. And fair to say, I've been watching the free surfs up there, and Seth has been out there a lot, and he is ripping.
Is he?
He's been the standout in the free surf so far, Sethman is at Sunset. There's been some amazing backhand performances. Yago Dora out there the other day was incredible, and it's a great wave on the backhand.
Wait, you've been watching Sunset. I got to adjust my fantasy surfer team.
Yeah, I'll give you
Who
some...
else you been watching?
Well, the old Ethan Ewing. You can't go past his style and technique at Sunset.
He's
made for that wave.
If only he had thick legs.
He's pretty thick.
I'm kidding. He doesn't
like
have, he doesn't have your legs.
Oh, glad you said he doesn't have chook legs.
How about Robbo?
Yeah, Jack Robbo knows that wave better than any of them. He surfs Sunset more consistently than any other pro. His approach to Sunset was very similar to Kelly Slater's approach to Pipeline, where he would just surf Pipeline and Sunset, that's it. Haleiwa on the odd occasion, but then when it wasn't a CT, it became sort of irrelevant, in terms of where you need to focus. And Jack Robbo is always out at Sunset, and he is always getting barreled. He knows that wave better than anyone, really.
And Felipe, who won it last year, just destroyed the place, isn't even in it.
So, big news there, isn't it? Felipe Toledo, he didn't surf his second heat. He surfed his first heat here at Pipeline, a couple of minor nothing scores. In the next heat, we were all sort of waiting to see how he would go in a win or lose type situation, do or die heat, and he pulled out, and consequently has pulled out of the rest of the year. Controversial. A lot of people up in arms, a lot of people with their own opinions and comments on his situation. I've seen the words mental health used to kind of explain the situation he finds himself and that he may need some space. Back in our day, I did 15 years on the tour, no break.
No money.
No money, no break, travel alone. You didn't have the opportunity to take your wife or your family or your entourage with you because you were sponsored so well and had enough money.
Devastatingly lost a world title that you thought you were going to win in the last seconds.
Yeah, that's
88. Story for another time.
87 was a downer.
But 88 you had experienced some highs and lows, yeah?
Yeah, and around you, you could see people breaking down under the pressure and the stress of doing a tour that might have had 30 events on it. So you're constantly traveling. Every second week there was an event.
And all your friends who are supposed to be your friends on tour are really your competitors.
They are your competitors.
They're not really your mates, huh?
It's an awkward thing. Yeah, it's an awkward situation,
This isn't a team sport, is it?
No. Well, I suppose in some events, the backdoor shootout, there's a team.
Yeah, but not
aspect.
On the WSL tour.
Back in the old days, we used to have in Australia a state of origin where Queensland would surf against New South Wales.
They don't do that anymore?
No, they don't do that anymore.
There's board riders events.
Yeah, and the board riders you surf for your clubs, and then in those state of origins, the New South Wales versus Queensland, I surfed for New South Wales, I coached New South Wales to victories.
And they weren't competitive?
Oh, they were competitive, but they were super competitive, but in the team environment, it was a whole different vibe. The party vibe was real high in that environment when you were all hanging together.
It's a different time, right? But so would you and Aki have been on the same team? So instead of being at each other's throats, you'd be pushing each other.
I remember a New South Wales team that was Damien Hardman, Matt Hoy, Shane Herring. We won it that year together as a team, and it was quite, as you could imagine, it was quite a party as well as as an event. And so there's that opportunity in team events to really come together and work towards a goal together. It was fantastic. And then there were times where we had international teams event where Australia surfed against America and Brazil, and you came together as an Australian team and represents your nation and surfed against other nations.
So would that have been the precursor to the ISA?
No, ISA was still doing theirs, and they have an individual format that has a team component attached to it, just like the shootout, backdoor shootout. So those events where you're doing it for yourself and for your team,
I like that.
It comes with a lot of pressure doing it for a team.
Yeah,
Doing it for
cool.
yourself's easy.
So what do you think about Felipe? You think he's just got a little burnout, and that's okay?
I think it's good that people can be given the space to do that.
Yep.
We didn't have the space to do that. By the time the end of 15 years, you can see in the history of pro surfing a list of casualties from not having the opportunity to get some distance at a point when you need it.
Didn't Medina take a year off?
And Kelly's taken years off.
Kelly took 3 years off.
Yeah, people have done that throughout time.
But he's never going to take another day off ever again, apparently. That's like, well, basically he took a nap.
Yeah.
3 years from like 2006 to 2009. But now he's here for the next 20 years.
I get you.
He's not going anywhere.
He could be 60 and on tour.
Yeah, so he fell off, of course, and he got the world champ wild card, which Carissa could get, Stephanie could get, Felipe's going to get, Gabriel got it. That's cool.
In that sense, it's kind of easier than it's ever been, is it not? You have less events to compete in. You have more money and sponsorship with which to do it. You have breaks and off seasons. And your events have windows where they wait and go at the best times. So there's all these things that have happened that have made it, in my mind, easier to do, easier to be a part of, easier to handle as an emotional experience. So we do see, the mental health tag used for people when they need that space. And sometimes there's other reasons, and that's like a generic statement that just goes over the top, doesn't it, So... yeah, whatever he does is his business, and he's a two-time world champ. I don't have an opinion because it's not my place to have an opinion on his life.
Well,
I respect
he'll
him.
be missed. We like him in those contests.
Yeah, and we all want to see him grow. I think we all see that there's work to be done in certain areas, and we want to see him commit to that tour and work in those areas where your weaker areas, and not just play to the strengths, but build the whole overall performance. I think that's what we expect of all competitors, all surfers. We want to see the world champs be able to surf at all of the amazing waves on the tour with success. You said it though, Felipe's won at J-Bay, he's won at Sunset. So on the big right-handers, he's proven that those calves go from lowers to Sunset or J-Bay and look just as good. So it's not a big wave thing, but perhaps it's more a backhand thing. And if he's choosing to focus on the Olympics, and he spends a lot of time going backhand in the tube, he gets himself well, gets himself happy, gets himself to where he needs to be, and then spends the time to focus on the Olympics only. That's going to give him a great advantage. While other people are running around the world doing the tour and stuff, I remember we spoke to Kelly Slater about the Olympics, and we asked him how he would lead into it if he had a chance, and he said he wouldn't do the tour. He wouldn't go on tour. If he made those Olympics, he would have pulled off tour.
And just go to Chopu.
Every swell, to Chopu, every swell, and practice and rehearse and just be there. And that's the opportunity that presents for Felipe.
Kelly Slater's pretty good at Chopu.
He doesn't need the time. It might be fair to say that Felipe needs the time there, and if he takes this time off the tour, he's really, when you think about it, he could go for a third world title. That's definitely there in the books. But if he pulls out and he focuses on those Olympics and gets himself to the point where he goes there and surprises all of us with his backhand tube riding performance in those crazy ones, that's one of the most terrifying waves in the world, he has the opportunity to silence everyone. But to silence everyone, you need to focus on maybe one thing, and maybe that in the back of his mind, while we know he's said that he needs some time to get space and get his head right and all of that. If he focuses on Chopu and the Olympics and goes there and wins it, it would be a masterstroke to have pulled off the tour and go and win the Olympic gold. Fair to say he may not win the Olympic gold without a concentrated effort and focus against people like John and the best surfers in the world out there at Chopu. So he might need that time. Maybe he figured that maybe that's it. Maybe there's a strategic underbelly to the plan, which is to focus on the Olympics and Chopu, get the performance to the level it needs to be, and win the gold.
Well, I know that's Carissa's plan.
Yeah, right. Well, that would make sense, wouldn't it? And if you had in your rears and you got 5 world titles, might have been 7, and you do that with focus, I feel like that's a masterstroke. So perhaps Felipe and Carissa are both onto something by taking the year off.
So we're back to pipeline.
Yes,
final. John and Barron, 2 local boys.
Local boys.
It was good to watch, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It felt like it was always going to be that final from the start of that day. Anyway, once all the goofies were out, and the naturals were left, when you looked down that draw, they were the 2 names that stood out at you. The king himself in John Florence. The heir apparent to Jamie O'Brien took that throne, and then the heir apparent to John Florence in everybody's eyes is Barron Mamia, and he took John's throne. And it was an amazing thing. Close final. It was 16 to 15.33.
So, short backstory.
Yes.
There was the HIC Pro out here 3 years ago. It was a regional event, and you could only be in it if you were from here. And it was a great event. It was in the place that sits December 8th to the 20th where the Fans Pipe Masters is now. But they didn't have that all set up yet, so HIC came in last moment and filled the void. That contest offered a wild card to the winner. The winner was John Florence. Second place was Barron Mamia. That's how Barron got on tour, because he got second to John out here. They put him in pipe. He did okay. They put him in sunset. He won. Now he had enough points by being a wild card. This is when they still gave wild cards points.
Yeah.
He had enough points to go to Portugal. Ironically, he was in second, and they sent him to Portugal. Moana was third on the women's, and they didn't send her to Portugal because WSL doesn't like that kind of a woman. Anyway, so Barron goes to Portugal, does fine, qualifies for the next 5 events, and that's how he got on tour. He got on tour by getting second to John and getting that wild card. John didn't need it because he was already on tour.
And then he went to
right
Sunset.
Here at Pipe. Yep, and then goes Sunset wins. Now, fast forward, Barron's still on tours, qualified, all because of getting that wild card at the HIC Pro local that offered a spot to the winner. And then he takes John out. Now, is that any way to repay John?
It sure is. That's the best way to repay him. It's a great story. Young local kid, Dad Barry.
Yeah.
Was surfed with Derek and Michael and was one of those guys. And he's smart young kid. Mm-hmm. Don't you think? Like he's street smart, but also got a calm, composed sense to him. He feels like a competitor.
Well, he's taking advantage of WSL still having a couple events in Hawaii, that's for sure. Winning Sunset 3 years ago. So we'll see how he does coming up. It's going to be fun to handicap that event.
Good on you, Barron Mamia, mate. That was a great win. That 10-point ride in the final was absolutely incredible. That was at a point where it felt like John was building momentum and things were going John's way, and to get that 10 at the time he needed it. And as you said, the conditions had slowed down by that time of the day a little bit, but there was still the bombs, and both those guys got them. And to see a 16 point versus 15.33 was pretty exciting too, because it meant that John was right there even with a 10-point ride.
So John got the first wave of that exchange, took it, and got an okay ride. Got a John score. And so Barron, you could see the stoke, like, imagine you're in a heat with John, and he takes off on a wave that you know is good. You're like, oh my gosh.
Here we go.
This sucks.
Yeah, but
then he takes that next one, gets that wave, and he came out. It was like 5 claims within 3 seconds. Like,
but in reality, if John had not gone the first, the second's always better.
Right.
How often is the second better? 80% of the time, most probably. The second wave is better. The first wave cleans out the bump, takes the water off the reef, and this is anywhere, not just pipeline. So I wonder if Barron kind of lured him into that first one. John didn't have a choice, really, because it was at a critical point. He thought he had to go to keep Barron off it. And as it turned out, at that point, I think John had an 8 and a 7, 3-3, and Barron had a 6. So John was clearly in the lead on 2 waves. The 6 could only take him into the lead with an 8. If he got a 10, if Barron got anything less than the 10, John would have stayed in the lead if he got a 9. But it was the 10 that took him into the lead by 6, 7 or something. From there on, history was made.
Yeah, John needed a 9, which was very gettable.
Yeah, but nothing came, and it was kind of over at that point. So big shout out to both those local kids. That night at Sunset Beach Elementary was surf night. Thousands of people and kids and that. I went there 20 years ago to it, and it was a tiny little thing. No one there. And Holly goes, "You're going to take some money, buy some food?" I go, "No, it's just a quick in and out, get autographs." I got there. There were vendors and thousands of people. A line that went, 500 kids long waiting to get autographs.
Wow.
It was amazing, an amazing night. So, for the North Shore, things really fizzed and popped on Saturday, and then we had Super Bowl on Sunday. You don't watch football, do you?
No.
No?
But we had 2 footballers in the yard.
We did. Ravens and Raiders representatives here at the house for the contest. And it was a great Super Bowl. Went into overtime. It was 19 all. Went into overtime. And we were going for there was the Kansas City Chiefs against the 49ers. And Kansas City Chiefs have old Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. Goodness gracious me,
How many
mate.
times did they cut to her during the...
It's 20.
Oh my,
That's
you
it.
got to be kidding.
Every time, and there's shots, he's always in every shot and she's in the next shot. And it was such an overwhelming thing that it just made a lot of people kind of support the 49ers for a start, because it was so obvious, this push for those people and their fame. But at the same time, when you saw old Patrick Mahomes, which is the quarterback,
He's great.
He is a true leader, mate. He wouldn't take losing it's just no way. And he more or less, I heard one of the commentators say that the 49ers didn't lose it, the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes won it.
Yep.
And he ran the ball twice on 2 plays, on 2 drives that got the first down and kept the dream alive. Then they got the touchdown and won the Super Bowl, and it was an amazing event. So big weekend for sport, Pipeline Masters and the Super Bowl.
How did you even figure out American football?
Well, I've watched it over the years. For us as Australians, Super Bowl Sunday, you were always hoping the waves were good, and you go surfing during the game. You go to Pipe, you go to one of the most crowded places during the game, and that was your best surf of the year there, because no one was out. Then when we moved, so occasionally I'd watch it, but then when we moved in a few years back and Lions started playing American football, last autumn, it became a big part of our lives. He was training every day of the week. The under-10s at Laie Park train Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Wow.
4:30 to 6:30, 2 hours, every day of the week. Games Saturday, and then the red zone and football Sunday. And it became this every day of the week, this American football thing for our family. And so we were watching all the games and just got fully involved in it. And I loved it. I love the game. I think it's fantastic. It's very different to rugby and Australian rules, but it's unique, mate. And watching NFL is like watching soccer or football in Brazil. When you go to Brazil and you turn on the telly and you're listening to the commentators, you're watching football, you're watching something special. It's unique. It's the lifeblood of people in that country.
You're watching 2 cities. You're not just watching the teams.
Yeah, that's right. And Flamengo has... Flamengo has... Guess how many followers the Flamengo football team is in Rio have?
200. I'm kidding.
No, 40 million followers. Wow. Flamengo have more followers than the nationality of the whole of Australia. Flamengo have 40 million followers or supporters of their team. So you're watching something special when you watch football in football.
That's a money-making enterprise, huh?
Well, I went to a game, Flamengo versus Atletico, and there were 60,000 jerseys that they sold in that stadium. Everywhere I was looking, I go, well, there's one. That's a big opportunity, a big football team. And when you're in America and you're watching the NFL, it's that same feeling I get. I know I'm watching something special, something unique, something that's deeply sort of characteristic of that country, of that nation and their people. Very cool thing. So congratulations, Kansas City Chiefs. We're Detroit Lions supporters, really, because of Lion and the Lions. So there's a natural bond for us. Yeah. So they made what you would think of the semis. They lost the week before. So good game. We don't mind it. All right, what else we got? Let's have a little look here. I'm heading to Puerto Rico for the ISA World Surfing Games.
When is that?
I leave on the 21st, Wednesday week. And that starts on the 20th. So it goes the 23rd to the 3rd.
And there's a spot open
February
for the men's team winner to add one more person to their team.
To the Olympic Games. And it was interesting to see Connor O'Leary, who is an Australian
For Japan.
surfing for Japan.
He grew up in Japan.
Yeah, and his mum's from there, so
He
he's kind of
speaks
got that
Japanese,
connection.
so-
He's got that connection.
Yeah.
Perhaps he felt he wasn't going to make an Australian team to the Olympics, and so representing Japan, I saw he's in the Japanese team going to Puerto Rico. A lot of the top surfers going to Puerto Rico to try and seal a spot in those Olympic Games.
And
Because,
ISA has made a rule, you told me. You have to compete if you show up.
yeah, because
No
that's
fake competing.
it's been a bit of a blight in the past where the best surfers come because you had to compete, but they'll surf a heat or two and then get sick.
So is Carissa in the ISA?
I didn't look at the American team.
That's interesting because she's already got her spot.
No,
Will she be going to compete?
It's
Maybe
a good
not.
question. She doesn't need to go and compete, but at the same time, I think,
That would be up to the USA team to decide all that.
yeah,
right?
and I suppose she would have the choice to decide. They would give her the choice to decide. If I'm Carissa, I'm going to erase that last heat at Pipeline from my mind. You don't want to have that thing lingering around as your last heat. I feel like emotionally, energetically, I would have to replace that heat immediately. You see it when guys fall in a heat, and they'll fall on a wave, and then they'll immediately get up on another wave and ride one just to replace the
Yeah.
fall with something new. I feel like for Carissa to go and compete before those Olympics and put another memory in there, another opportunity to feel good about yourself and about competing would be, again, a strategic move that would work really well for her. I want to talk about turning February into December. Now, what we have and have traditionally had when the IPS ran the sport and they set up the Triple Crown by Randy Rarick, Fred Hemmings, surfers, people who understood the
One of
local
the
community.
greatest inventions of all time.
Yeah, it was a great thing.
competitive surfing.
Yeah, the Triple Crown was amazing. And it was a 6-week power window, Haleiwa into Sunset, into Pipeline, finished the World Tour December 20 before Christmas on a calendar year, and the World Tour would be out of town before Christmas. Then January, we'd have the backdoor shootout, and then the end of January, February, March was open season for locals to surf. This was a deliberate design by the Randy Rarick and those guys to have the tour in and out before Christmas, so that the locals, their lifestyle, the waves that they are here to surf, they don't get skunked. What WSL has done in its own kind of greedy way by thinking, well, we'll get better waves in February than December. December hasn't been that good. If we go in February, we'll get better waves and we can start our tour there and we're going to reshuffle everything. They have turned February into December. I used to come early when I'd retired and I wasn't working, at events at all. I would come, October to early November, do an early month, leave for the Triple Crown, come back at Christmas, and then spend that off season here, the January, February, and it was, for the local people, it was the best time of year because all the contests are gone, all the pros are gone, the focus is heading to other parts of the world, and it's their time, they get their waves. Now, you've still got Haleiwa on, you've still got Pipeline, the Vans Pipeline Masters, so the November, December, what was Triple Crown period is still packed. It's still a contest season in itself.
It's an endless contest season.
And then
now.
then we go into the backdoor shootout, which has its own place. Then from the middle of January through to the end of February, call it, the world's best surfers come for a 6-week period and take the off season and turn it into something more crowded than just November, December. So now there's November, December, January, February, there's 4 months of events through peak season, and the local people who live here have got to put up with that. And my thing is, you should go back, finish on a calendar year, and have it all done.
There's no off season.
They've turned February into December.
So should we change our calendars?
Something needs to change. I just feel like it's a little bit overkill to kind of run this whole period, November, December, January, February, with contests. What makes it even worse, I suppose, is that the setup for Sunset has been there for a week.
Right.
The event hasn't started. They start setting up for a week. There's site sheds, take half the car park.
Takes half the parking spots away.
And that stuff's all being, there's all the infrastructure here at Pipeline. There's all the infrastructure there at Sunset. They're taking 2 spots. with their infrastructure, and then all the free surfing and all the practice and all the pros with their photographers and their entourages and all the judges and all the, all the staff and infrastructure that comes with WSL, all of a sudden there's thousands and thousands of people here who ordinarily aren't, who are here at what was the off-season, now turning the off-season into the on-season, and it's really inconsiderate to the people who live here that they don't get the opportunity to have any time of peak season to themselves without competitions on.
What's the solution?
The solution is
Barton for governor?
Go back to what it was, finish it all up by Christmas, and then you've got your off-season at the back end. People can still come and surf. Doesn't mean they can't surf, but having the events and the competitions through that whole 4-month period is overkill to me. Yeah, it's too much, and brings employment. So there's the benefits to the community in that sense as well. But at the same time, from a surfing point of view, it definitely steals the luster of what was the off-season. We talked about Sunset coming up. Who are your picks, mate?
Just real quick, pick for Sunset, Jack Robbo, John. That's the final.
That's a good final. I'll throw Barron and Ethan in there with those two.
Well, those are your semifinal guys.
Yeah, that'd be a top 4, wouldn't it?
And women's, I'd say Carissa, but she's just not there. So let's go with the young kids, Molly and Katie, repeat.
I reckon you could easily see that. Betty Lou as well was an incredible performance by her here, and just missed out on making that final as well. Got that last minute ride and could have been the score, just came in under. So
I thought it was the score, by the way.
Well, in comparison to the 10, I just figured it couldn't be the score. The 10 was a little bit better, a little more critical, and to do it on the backhand was something we've never seen to that degree. Molly Picklum, although she didn't win the event, her and Caitlyn and Betty Lou were all there right on that level, but I feel like Molly had a little bit of class about what she was doing. Katie had this sort of rad, aggressive edge to things, but it wasn't quite as sketchy kind of.
Yeah, her feet were like not totally on a board coming out of the barrel. She didn't care, throwing a little cut back.
Just ripping.
Yeah, she was just letting it go. Okay, exactly. So that's 3 names for Sunset on the girls. You got one more?
Betty Lou, one more.
Gabrielle O'Brien.
That's a good pick too. New, young. Zoe McDougall is the wild card. She's got a lot of experience out there. So Kai Lenny on the men's front.
That's right, Kai Lenny. So the wild cards, by the way, as you know, they do not get points, and you can only get 1 wild card per year now.
Right.
As a gifted into an event.
Okay.
But they do get the money. So they get the minimum prize money, which is about 10 grand. So, yay, good for them.
And that's great because in the past we have seen surf companies that ran the events use the wild cards to get people on tour.
Right. Can't do that anymore.
And you can't do that anymore, which is that's a great thing. So
I don't like when they choose wild cards based on like local rankings, and they do all this, they do all this creative financing to figure out who gets in. Just go to the next person on the CS and the next person on the CT and the next person on the CS, next person. How about the person that surfed all year? As the wild card. I don't like these sponsored wild cards, but I get it because you're trying to extract $1.5 million from a company who basically gets nothing back to sponsor your event.
Lexus.
So we'll give you one person. Yeah, how many Lexuses do you think were sold during the Pipeline Pro?
We'd like to know. Let us know. If WSL, let us know. How many Lexuses did you sell? I remember you saying it's a bit of an odd, the Lexus Pipeline Pro. It just rolls off the tongue.
Rolls off the tongue. Whatever. I mean, we're glad someone's sponsoring surfing.
And it's good to see outside companies come in and support the sport because they don't essentially usually have a vested interest. If it's a Quicksilver, Billabong, Rip Curl, Hurley, whatever, they have a vested interest. So both Zoe and Kai are Hurley-sponsored riders, hence why they get their wild cards. I'm with PK that if you've done the whole tour and you're the next in line, but a sponsor's exemption gets in front of you because they're paying the money, I understand that. But as an international sport, that person next in line on those rankings, once that spot opens up, they deserve that because they've committed their life and the whole year before it to get that ranking that gives them the opportunity to get a wild card. So if they're always going to sponsors, which of course they need as well, so it's a bit of a tough situation.
But it's not just sponsors. Like they put in, I don't want to say the names because I don't want to cut them down, but they put people in who are doing good on the local QS rankings. I'm sorry. Well, you got to put someone who competed on the CS last year or the person who just missed on the CT. That's who deserves that spot.
Up or down.
So let's go to trials.
That's the point. You need trials.
How about trials at the beginning of the season and 8 people get in on both sides, or at least 4?
Yeah, particularly at
Liam
certain...
used to just hammer Randy Rarick in the WSL, what's called the ASP,
Yeah.
and make them do local trials. There's no one really fighting for that. It'd be great to just have local trials then.
Yeah,
and I guess that's what they're saying the QS is, but not everyone surfs the QS. And a way, telling me the QS results from Rangi Roa and bowls is not necessarily representative of what's going on out here.
100%.
Would love to have seen local trials.
Yeah.
1-day event.
Yeah.
Let 8 get in.
100%. Then you've the trials end up being better than, or as good as the main event. And it's a fantastic spectacle.
They used to do it at Chopu too.
Yeah. And so that's I think something we both agree on is that local trials for events at specialty locations.
Yeah, but then you
give
look
them
at
all a
Bells.
chance.
Bells does it, but it's just rip curl athletes competing for a rip curl spot.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird. I kind of feel like the best locals from the area should be represented. I don't know.
Well,
it's just an idea to come up with when you run a tour.
Yeah,
right, that's all I'm saying.
Watch out.
All right,
keep your eyes open. But this also brings up the idea of formatting. You've got a 10 or 12-day window. If you've got one format and you only run one format regardless of forecasts, you're going to find yourself in a pickle. Because you're stuck in one format. There's several formats that exist. Obviously, the traditional ASP format is one, man on man competing against each other. That Eddie I Cow style format, where you'll have maybe 10 people in the water for an hour, and they surf. That format itself could see the Pipe Masters in a really bad year of the forecast, maybe this year, where you can run 6 rounds. And pick your winner out of that. So there's different formats that maybe need to be considered by WSL.
That's not a bad format for Sunset.
Great format.
10 people in the water.
Big open space, lots of room.
Yeah.
And then you get 4 or 5 surfs. And you get to see the good guys run. So I think WSL need to consider other formats that will suit the forecast. And you look at the forecast and you go, with this forecast, we're running that format.
Well, they did that at the wave pool, didn't they? They did. They did rounds.
Oh, yes. I see what you're saying.
Yes.
I thought you meant adapted it to the forecast. Forecast is 2 to 4 every day.
They did that, though, at the wave pool. They were willing to change the format a little bit for the wave. It was more like a golf thing. You surfed 3 times. You had a leaderboard. It was great. So I think more spots should have that. Pipeline on a huge day would be great for that. Just send 10 guys out.
And it could be, you divide your number by whatever. It could be divided by 4 and you end up with 8 people heats or whatever. I think that type of flexibility in running the sport is needed because you're not dealing with something constant out there. So to run one format in every condition, in every forecast, means you're going to have heats and days where you don't get anything. So we suggest that they look at different formats for different forecasts, have some options of formats that they can fall back on when the forecast doesn't deliver. But they got out of jail. We give WSL an out of jail card in this game of Monopoly. They got the out of jail card. The first day and the final day were incredible. Performance surfing at its highest. The ladies stole the show. Barron and John sealed the deal for the locals, and it was a fantastic event. And I think that brings our podcast for today to a close. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I want to thank a New Earth Project and the Pipeline Podcasts and you, Pipeline Studios, for having us here. And we will continue to bring you live action from the North Shore and the world of surfing week by week. We love you. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.